Hey, I'm Pops, and I'm going to talk to you about Aquaman. I know, Aquaman and New 52 Aquaman. I know. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it great? Is it worth reading? How did I end up here? Well, first off, I thought to myself, a lot of what they're doing over at Warner Brother Discovery is got a track record of pulling out a New 52. Geoff Johns, of course, is famously tied to adapting those projects, and he was basically pulling all the stuff that he wrote, right? Which is fine. And this film, Shazam, was lifted directly out of his Justice League, and there was a Trench Aquaman spinoff, sequel, film, whatever, by James Wan that was discussed. And I'm like, okay, well, I've never read that story. So this is that story. So it's basically only 4 issues. Geoff Johns writes it with Yvonne Reis, which, by the way, the pronunciation of a name, poor guy. Wish he'd just tell us how to pronounce his name. I'm like, okay, let me give it a shot. And I will tell you that the biggest thing I can recommend over everything else is the art is fantastic. His work is just top notch. It's fantastic what they do. They bring to life, and it does illustrate again why the Jason Momoa casting was absolutely horrible, because this representation of Aquaman is, and by the way, these issues, Johns is very self-aware of the Aquaman jokes about talking to fish and the SNL sketch and, are you any good away from water and those kinds of things. Like there are panel after panel, and almost irritatingly so. Like there are scenes where you're wanting Arthur to just punch this one guy in the face in this diner who's just like knit at him. And I'm like, dude, you're messing with basically like a semigod, demigod. I don't even know what the appropriate terminology is for someone like Arthur, who's, just incredible. Like it's just incredible what he's able to do and withstand. So anyway, the story, this is the first issue. This is a story that deals with just like the unknown. And I will say, I really did enjoy the journey. This is the depths of how this starts. And you end up with this creature, this sort of like piranha xenomorph type creature. And you have sort of like the dialogue here in the bubble. And then this is the translation. And they're basically just coming to the surface from the trench. They're from the depths. And when they do, they're going to interact with Arthur and Mira. And again, Mira is beautiful and powerful. And again, this is why Amber Heard's casting makes no sense, because she doesn't bring any of that to light in this role. But it's very, very sweet relationship-y type stuff that we get in this. And this is after they attack some humans. So you can see this film, if they had adapted it, to try to get it to PG-13 would not have done the story justice. And I don't know that the studio would have been interested in making a rated R film like this. But the concept is very, very interesting and very, very good. And I think it's not a bad idea for the Aquaman sort of like lore. But you have these creatures that just come to the surface. They just come to the surface, and they're looking for food. And they basically have no problem, basically like piranha, of just consuming. And look at the art. This is the way the first issue ends, with this reflection in the eye of the sailor on the boat. And it's like it sees him. It says there's food up there. Like there's already blood all over him. But it's like they want more. It's not going to be enough. And then you get basically the exact same carryover in the cover of issue number 2, which I like, where you have that image from the first issue with Aquaman with the trident in the reflection. I think it's just great. I think it's a fantastic cover. I really like that. And then you can see this level of detail with the humans not having the ability to really take on the trench creatures. This just insane. They try, different bullets and flares and different things like that. And there's just so many of them. You're just like these vampiric looking trench piranha monsters attacking. It's just insane. And then, of course, the backstory is Arthur living on the island and Mira, and him trying to kind of like, he has like normal moments of going out into the world and eating food and those kinds of things. But when there's call to action, they're right there. And it's really, really good. This is the second issue. Still, you can see Mira using her powers right here. Very, very interesting dynamic. And then just the blood. Like the trident goes to the face, and you just see the blood splattering everywhere. Like I said, this would not have been something that would have been for like the little kids. This would have been something that was definitely more adult driven. And I think this could have actually have worked. Now, issue 3, look at the cover. Like there's a run through with the trident and you see Mira in the background. And there's just I'm going to call them these piranha xenomorph things everywhere, these deep creatures. And the action is awesome. They have interesting elements in their design as far as being humanoid, but also just obviously they're from like the depths of the ocean. So they're not, quite human. And then, here's a close up shot of the panel where Arthur gets bit, like just like it bites into him and gets him. Right. So he spends the rest of the issues just kind of a mess. Mira herself using her powers to control water to throw them around and handle them as well. So really liked all this. I love the hand-to-hand combat stuff, lots of blood, whatever. And this is the creature thinking or saying, "What are you?" And then it's like trying to fend him off because Arthur's been bit once, and how to deal with him. And then they realize that they got to go down deep, and so they go to the trench. So they're not quite sure what they're going to find. There's a ton of missing people. There's a ton of fear. And they go and they just go deeper and deeper and deeper. So they head to the trench. This is the cover. And then you end up with what they're going to find, right? And then the first thing they see is, because they're underwater, is they see this. It's their spawn. So there's like these tiny little creatures that they see first. And they keep going further and further down. And ultimately, there's just these great attack and fight scenes underwater, very intense with Arthur and Mira. Sometimes they're doing well, sometimes they're not. You're not quite sure how they're going to get out. And then ultimately, this thing grabs Arthur from behind and starts pulling it down. So it's like, it says, "You will be absorbed into me." And it's like for their children, like the volcanic vent. I have one shot. I'm sorry. And basically, they don't know exactly what to do and how to win. They understand that it's an organism trying to survive, but at the same time, it's so incredibly dangerous and powerful. It doesn't know what to do. Now, this is where the story turns awry because you have this big fights where he's trying to set off volcanic stuff to create more chaos. And this would have been pretty cool, but the solution, let me back up. The solution ultimately is kind of like sealing up the trench, like putting like rocks and stuff. If it was like the first film and maybe multiple films, that could have worked. But if that was what they proposed, I could see the studio kind of balking. Like that wouldn't really translate well to film. It would be a very cheesy sort of end to all of this underwater battle and things like that. I don't know the studio could pull this off as well as like a James Cameron studio really could. But there's like jokes earlier on. That's what you have. I kept this ending where you see him and Mira on the shore. And this little boy is like, "You're my favorite zero." So he's covered in like the muck. That's not just water. It's literally like the slime, because they have like this cocoon thing that the creatures would have. Because Arthur at one point opens up one of the cocoons they get a hold of, and it's like a dog, and he saves the dog. And then ultimately at the end, that's how it goes. Is one of the officers brings him the dog. And the police are definitely not sure how to handle him, how to take him and stuff, which is, again, a theme that runs well through some of the early issues of New 52, but not consistent. It's all over the map, and it's definitely not something I think that they had worked out of what their plan's going to be. But this is one of the Geoff Johns stories that actually works. I think it's one of the ones that held up well, and I could see why they would propose it. I know Johns was very biased with what he was interested in promoting because it's his stuff, it's his work. But it's something I think you could get. I'm going to consider it a very good read. I'm not sure it's a great read. Like I said, the ending and some of the things that are contrived along the way. The art is fantastic. But it's a good read if you're just kind of like a mild Aquaman fan or reader or whatever. You will kind of want to get like more of a modern flair feel. Those first 4 issues, I haven't really continued on in the series or anything like that. I'm not vouching for the series or where it goes after that or anything like that. Just these first few issues. So anyway, that's my thoughts. Maybe you guys have read this. So it's been out for years, obviously. It's like I said, I just one of those things I had not caught and read. Just wanted to catch up and throw that out there for you guys as far as something that you can find that very inexpensive in a trade paperback. Obviously, at this point, they're kind of ubiquitous, and you probably can find them very inexpensive at your local stores or even the internet. So anyway, that's my time. Thank you so much. I'm Pops.
I'm Ross. All I do is chill. My life is a thrill, for real, Bob Ross. cause a problem, I'll solve it, Barbara.